Welcome to the Executive Innovation Show podcast, where we bring you real executive conversations with industry game changers and thought leaders. We ask the questions you're thinking, what you're scared to ask, and we make your brain hurt afterward. With your host, Carrie Chitsey Wells, co-founder and CEO of One Touch Video Chat, live video interviews, and the nonprofit Humans Helping Humans.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. We're going to be talking about the top digital banking trends for 2021, as well as going over 2020 in review and what lessons did we really learn from COVID that is really changing the way that banks and credit unions will be operating in 2021. So today's show, it's just going to be me, and if you stay tuned in a couple of weeks, we're going to have some additional guests to really be going in deep on some of these and hearing from some great banking executives on how they were really impacted in 2020. So first, let's start reviewing 2020 a little bit and what did COVID really teach banks. I think number one, and we would all agree that digital is key and video is key. What banks really learned is that they have to have not just a contingency plan, but a plan in place for their employees to work remotely, which has never really been done in banking before, and that they need to have digital plans both from the acquisition side of getting new customers and the servicing side from a customer service and a retention perspective. I think one of the other things that was critical is we spent so much time in banking really trying to change branch layouts over the last few years to be this more open, inviting environment for customers to actually want to come in. This was really to combat that people weren't coming into the branch anymore and numbers were really going down with digital technology. But now branches really have to look at, how do we now change that again for safety and keeping employees safe and customers safe for those that come in with the glasses back up, with not these open environments. And so I think we'll really see in 2021, banks really looking at it, do they want to spend that, $2 to $5 million on physical branches, given what they just learned from a digital perspective? And if they do, I think a lot of architects are changing layouts right now and how that will look. As we've seen all over the news from the FDIC, banks' numbers are down dramatically. A lot of that has to do with, a lot of banks were really not prepared to acquire customers digitally. A lot of your community banks and credit unions, while doing digital marketing, still required you to come into a physical location to show that driver's license, to sign documents. And so historically, digital sales from banks in the U.S. was less than 10% of their acquisition. And your top global banks, it was upwards of 27%. So those banks thrived while your local and community banks still struggle. I think when those numbers come out for 2020 and 2021, we're going to see a big shift in those numbers. So I really want to get into where do we see some of the banking trends for 2021. I think number one is this virtual workforce. I think banks historically didn't want employees working from home because of security requirements. I think now we're seeing them do more with less employees for those that had to furlough employees. And I think some of your essential tellers and things like that will stay in physical locations. But as we look at relationship managers, business lending, loan officers, things like that, I think we're going to see a shift in some of those folks will be working in a hybrid model. Maybe they work from home a few days. A lot of times these folks were already out on the road going and seeing customers, trying to build community relationships. And so I think we'll see more of that now that banks are have seen that can work from that perspective. Back in 2015, McKinsey did a report on what percentage of U.S. customers actually wanted remote advice, whether that's wealth management, that's investments, things like that. And it was 41%. That was 5 years ago. In 2019, less than 22% of banks actually offered remote advice through video or through phone. So 2021, going to see a lot of that. We're going to talk about video banking in a minute, which will be a big trend in 2021. But as we look at those high margin products, as we look at servicing high net worth individuals, a lot of people have moved from their local demographic. Businesses are relocating entire headquarters from California to Texas, things like that. You might not be in a position where you're by your local bank. And a lot of people need financial advice right now with the PPP loans, with financial struggles, things like that. You have to have a remote advice strategy using video, still keeping that face-to-face interactions to be able to service those customers because they're not in your driving distance anymore for a large percentage of them. Next one, video banking. Video banking, every industry has seen such a rise in video conferencing, schools, work, everything like that. Everybody's now comfortable being on video, having those video interactions. From a banking perspective, video banking can move the needle. On the acquisition side, really increasing 3x that conversion rate, helping you with your NPS and CSAT scores, and then really helping you increase that wallet share up to 20%, adding more product lines, having better relationships. Your customers are not only banking with you, they're banking with others. And they're banking with others because it's easy. They got longer hours. They're digital. And so you have to have video banking to compete on the acquisition side and, more importantly, on the servicing side to be able to increase that wallet share and retention. The average bank doesn't even profit off those customers for 3+ years. So acquiring those customers, you can spend as much money as you want, but you have to retain them. And by having those virtual face-to-face relationships, it's going to increase that retention for you. Which leads to my next one, relationship management. Most relationship managers, by default, industry-wide, they focus on that 20% of their customer base that has the money that's coming in, that they have the relationship with. And the 80% of those customers, they might reach out to them once a year, maybe twice a year, but they don't really have a good relationship with them. Get those 80% on video banking. Schedule update calls. Develop that relationship face-to-face. Be proactive and stay top of mind. If you do that through video banking, that wallet share is going to go up dramatically. Those customers that are banking with 3 to 5 different financial institutions, they're going to remember you on that face-to-face versus the guy next door that's making a phone call. So you have to get video banking on the relationship side from that perspective. And the last one, as we talk about the digital footprint, as we talk about the acquisition side, acquiring new customers, conversion rate is key. It doesn't matter how many applications are started online. It's what's finished and what converts. So you need a strategy that if people are starting applications and abandoning, that you're reaching out to them, you're setting up video meetings, you're scheduling those, and you also have live video on your website. So if somebody has questions about products, they need advice, you have somebody that's manning that they literally can click, say, I need to talk to a business banker now. Boom, you're there face to face and really drive that conversion rate. Regardless of how much money you're spending on acquisition, typical acquisition is less than 1% on the conversion rate. You have to increase that. The only way to increase that is you have to have that digital workflow that allows them to start and finish and acquire a customer all online. It can be assisted through a video banker, but it can't be they start and then they have to come in. Your conversion rate will drop off. If we go back down to state closures, if we go back to things like that, people are going to be wanting to open accounts, do everything online, and not have to come in physically to keep themselves safe, to keep you safe. Pre-COVID, it was a convenience factor, and today convenience is still king, but as well as safety. I'll close with one more thing in thinking about digital. Most banks, most employees have been in the banking world for their entire career. The online banks, online only banks that are really thriving have brought people in from other industries, whether it's retail, whether it's online only banks. You have to stop thinking like a four-wall brick and mortar bank and start thinking about virtually extending hours, acquiring customers beyond your driving distance to really make up some of those margins and expand in the current times that we live in. If you don't have that digital strategy in place, definitely it's a top priority. I'm sure it's already on your plate. So to get more tips on how to really grow from a servicing perspective and increasing wallet share, retention, NPS and CSAT, as well as acquisition, reaching people better, higher conversion rates, subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for all the special guests we have coming down in 2021. And we look forward to helping you make 2021 great and a heck of a lot greater than 2020. Stay tuned for the next episode, and that's all for the show today.
This podcast has come to a close. To hear more from the Executive Innovation Show podcast, subscribe, submit questions, and share the love. Follow us on social. We're everywhere.